Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Carol Hutchins. Grace Under Pressure is that show that deals with what's too often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment, the courage that we exert for our teams. And when you do it as a leader, as you will definitely discover that Carol Hutchins is, you do it with a reason of bringing people together for common cause. Carol Hutchins, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. What a great honor to get to share this platform with you, and looking forward to meeting your audience.
Well, great. I want to tell folks a little bit about you. Carol Hutchins just wrapped her 38th season at the helm of University of Michigan's softball program. She is the winningest coach in NCAA softball history. She was inducted into the Fastpitch Hall of Fame in 2006, and that's 14 years ago. She's been doing a lot of this for a long time. She is a critical part of the university's athletic department. She is not only an exceptional coach, she's a mentor. She is very active in NCAA sports as they relate to women's athletics, and has been an asset wherever she has been. And Carol, it is such a pleasure to have you on our show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. I have followed your career for so many years. I live in Ann Arbor, as most of our guests know, and so I've seen your team play live. And I wanted, and it's always fun to watch your young ladies on the team. They're always into the game, whether they're on the field or on the bench. So I'm going to ask you the dumb question, but do you coach enthusiasm?
Well, I really tell kids, we're here to coach you, but I should not have to coach your energy, your attitude, or your enthusiasm. Those are things that are innate and really are the minimal that we expect. But what I think you see is when kids are into it, we hope everybody in that dugout values their role. And I understand. I mean, not everybody's the starter. Not everybody bats for. Not everybody gets to have the career that they all thought they were going to have. We have kids who are role players. They're bullpen catchers. They're pinch runners. And we have to value all of them because everybody matters, whether you're the pinch runner, whether you're the team manager, and all of them help contribute to the ultimate goal, which is the success of Michigan softball.
I love that. Everyone has a role. Now,
everyone has a role. And if you want your role to change, you aspire to be more than a pinch runner. Good. I hope that you do. But you need to master your role. You need to embrace it and be really, really good at it. Just like when you go in the corporate world, you're not going to get a promotion if you don't like your role, you don't really embrace it. But who's going to say, well, let's move you up and see if you do better in a harder role? No, embrace it. Be the best pinch runner out there, and you get a chance to move.
So, okay, well, let's deal with this because this happens a lot then. So if the pinch runner or bullpen catcher comes up to you and says, Coach Hutch, which you were known as, I want to be a starter. What's the conversation that you have?
Well, sometimes it's depending on how they phrase it. I might say, well, who should you start over? We'll ask them that question because they may name somebody that, and then we have the conversation of why that person is starting over them. But, we don't like to get into too much talking about the other people, but a lot of times kids, they think they should play more, but they can't tell me who should not play. But more than anything, we lay out the specifics of what you need to do to move up the rungs and that you have to meet these things. And really, to me, the biggest gap is when the student athlete thinks they're doing all these things. And we have to help them understand that you are doing them, but you're not doing them at the level that we expect or need to compete at the highest level.
Right. Well, that raises something, and you had mentioned his name in passing before the show, and it was Red Berenson. And I had the pleasure of writing about Red once, and he told me that, my words, he had to modulate the way he coached freshmen or seniors. So, for example, if he were coaching a freshman and he raised his voice, he said, I would lose that a player for 3 weeks. He said, sometimes if I didn't scream at a senior, they wouldn't listen. Does that resonate with you, Carol?
Well, I'm finding more and more this generation does not care to be yelled at, period. And they think when you have critical analysis of their performance, they consider that being yelled at. So I think we've had to modulate everything we do to be fair. But more than everything, what it speaks to is you have to figure out, and as you get to know your kids and coach them over the years, they all need different approaches. And I was in the dugout once, and Megan Betts was our star pitcher, and she was next to me. And our pitcher on the mound was literally melting down. And Megan looks at me and she says, "Hutch, you need to go blow her up." And I looked at her, I said, "Really? Is that what I need to do when you're out there melting down?" And she said, "No, I need to be calm to pitch." And it struck me like, why, where am I? Of course this is true. What do they need? And we need to be, as the leader, as the coach, what do they need from us? Some kids really need encouragement. Some kids do really well with reality. But I think they're all different. And I don't think it's necessarily gender or age related. It's just each human being is as different as a snowflake, to quote my mother.
That's great. And, as you're talking about the differences in the players and the differences connecting with them and coaching them, I'm exhausted because I don't know how many, did you have 20 players on your team? So,
approximately, give or take, every year.
Yeah. So how did you last for 38 years?
Well, you learn as you go. Honestly, I can look back at almost every player I've coached and recognize that it took me a while to really understand what they needed. It probably took me a while to realize I was busy being me, and I'm a hothead and I blow up when things don't go well. And I realized, well, that's not going to help them. And so you always keep evolving, but you learn people as you go. And we are in a growing process with these kids who are 4 or 5 years in your program. And from the time they come in to the time they leave, they grow, they bloom like flowers, and our relationship grows. Because the kid I know when they come in, I've recruited them, I know them in one dimension. And then as we go through the ups and downs, and there's a lot of them in athletics, by the time they leave, we are woven like a tight fabric.
That's right. Now I want to shift this a little bit, because we always talk to players about coaches about players, but I think, and this is so relevant to our audience here, is what do you look for when you select an assistant coach? What are you looking for, Carol?
Well, you're asking probably the one person who my staff was in place for 28 years. We were the longest tenured staff in the NCAA softball world until I stepped down. But I've had a number of volunteer coaches or operations and support staff. The most important aspect to me is, do they have what it takes? People get really caught up. I'll call people to recommend one of my former players, and people are really caught up in, well, how is she in the office? Like, you don't win in the office. Office is one of the nuances, and then, to me, is a nuisance. But of course it has to be done. And I'm like, they have the wherewithal. They know how to spell. They know how to follow directions. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. But the people I hired in, and Bonnie Thole was one of my only the third assistant coach I ever had. And the other two had only been previous stops. And she was the least qualified when I hired her. She was blue as they come. She graduated a few years prior. I knew her love of Michigan softball and her fantastic wherewithal. I knew she would have great recruiting acumen, because she doesn't forget anybody's birthday. If you tell her your birthday today, John, she'll tell me in 2 years, hey, today's John Baldoni's birthday. And,
well, that's because my birthday's next week, Carol.
I'll tell her.
Anyway.
I think that we get caught up in skill sets that, of course, you need a skill set, but the most important skill set in people is the people skill set. And that can take you over, that can get you through so much.
Well, now I'm going to shift it back, just because you mentioned the people skill set, and we've been through COVID, living through it, and all of the other things. And of course, the student mental health is a significant issue. So is there more pressure on coaches to coach the whole person? Is there that recognition, Carol?
Well, to me, it's more of an enlightenment, because probably we have always been supposed to coach the whole person. We've just never been so responsible for the whole person as we are in today's world. Because kids have, mental health is certainly, we're much more aware of it. Kids have always had issues with whether it's confidence, whether it's anxiety, whether it's home issues that they bring with them to school. And we've always been there for them, but we've never needed to be for them more than we ever have today. I think it's really exposed, it's really magnified. And we feel very responsible to ensure their safety in every category, and including taking care of their mental health. And it has become, without a doubt, an all-encompassing world. And coaching today, I always say, has never been more challenging. It isn't just about balls and bats.
No, I think that. So shifting a bit, what about team leadership? What role does a coach play in nurturing team leadership, or does that come from the players themselves? So,
well, I truly believe that. I don't believe in just your natural born leader, but some kids are naturally more personable or charismatic than others. But I've always said you've got to work the internal workings of the clubhouse, because you have your leaders that are designated by whether it's captain's vote or captainship, and you have your informal leaders that are running the show. And whether they're running the team parties or running the locker room gossip and positive and negative type of things going on in there. And as a coach, it's good to have a pulse on who your kids are, when you're around them and when you're not around them. And you want to help mentor all of their approach, how we approach our adversity, how we approach our game preparation, how we approach every day when we walk in. We're trying to have a championship mindset, and we need championship approach. So we have to figure out which kids needs mentoring to help keep them on that straight and narrow, and to help mentor them when they need to mentor others.
Okay. What do you say to a coach that is has a superstar, but the superstar is not getting along with the rest of the team? Is there a role for the coach, or is that a role for the team?
Sometimes it's the role of the coach to figure out what do I need to do to help make this situation. And a lot of it, we're helping kids grow up. But I mean, face it, in the adult world, you still have the same situations. And a valuable member of our team, and this is a person. And so when they're having issues, what are we doing to first say, hey, what's going on? What can I help you with? But I can mentor those kids that are around her who understand. And we had a kid on our team. Her name was Olivia. And we always called her, if you recall the Scandal show, Olivia Pope, because she was the fixer. And we made sure she fixed any team issues or took care of some of the star players that needed just to keep them moving in the right direction, and she kind of helped make everything go. But there's always the kids in the clubhouse they're the caretakers, and they're going to take care of things. And you figure out who those kids are, and those are people that want to see the organization function at a high level, and they're willing to do those things. And you're certainly going to have that, whether it's superstars or just individuals who are challenged. I'm plugging my computer in. I'm a duck for a minute. Just realize it's not plugged in, and of course it's about to go dead. So my mistake.
We don't want to. We want to keep you, Carol. So
I'm used to being a remote.
I want to do a little prelude here, so it'll be good.
Okay.
You, if I know your career, you are. I'm going to use the word a child of Title IX, which is the beginning of ensuring parity in men and women's sports and athletics. So how's that gone?
I always call myself a Title IX boomer. And I was in 10th grade in high school when that law passed. And like everybody else, who knows what Congress is doing? And we don't know anything about it. But obviously, back in those days, I didn't play varsity sports. I didn't play high school softball. We didn't have it. And women just a couple years older than me will come up to me all the time and say, man, I wish I never got to do any of this. And really, I came in a time when we started evolving into, by my senior year, we got to have a varsity basketball team and a real schedule, and went to Michigan State, and we were all walk-ons. And of course, the men were all full rides. And, and I eventually got some scholarship money, and it was not much, but it was as we evolved into it. And my whole career, I evolved with Title IX. And today you see what you see. You see ESPN covering us. You see multi-million-dollar stadiums that are filled with people that adore softball and adore women's basketball. And we have evolved. We're totally evolving. We're still evolving. I don't think we've arrived. I wouldn't say we've arrived, and I wouldn't say we're done, but we have come a long way.
Right. What will arrival mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. I think one thing that we're seeing with the advent of the CFP, the advent of NIL, and all these other things is the men's sports are now escalating. And are we about educating these student athletes and using our tools, which is mine, our balls and bats, and Jim Harbaugh's are footballs and guys tackling each other. But the whole purpose of athletics and education meshing is because we're part of the educational arm. And the best lessons that you can learn are on the field of athletics, when you overcome adversity, when you learn how to fail and learn how to get up, and you become such a strong, empowered person. But are we about that anymore? Are we just about money? And right now the money is following the men, and
big time
behind a little bit. And so where do we go? Do we have enough? Well, we have a lot of great things, but it seems like when it comes down to it, men are still often valued at a higher rate.
Well, yeah. From a pure financial standpoint, it's the men's sports. Well, two of them that generate the income for the athletic department. But you said something which was that I wanted to touch on, and I'm glad. I think it's a result of Title IX. So many women that I know of who are 40s and 50s and senior leadership positions, many of them played at least high school athletics. And I love what you just said about learning how to overcome adversity on the field, because that is what sports teaches, does it not? So
and teamwork, putting team above self. I have so many alums that come back. 38 years, I have over 200 children, and they come back and tell the stories of going out into their work world. And they're like, oh my God, nobody knows how to function. They don't know how to communicate. We're a highly functioning organization. And I take a lot of pride in that, but there's no question that I think the lessons that the student athletes learn in athletics are lessons that would benefit everybody. And that's why we're part of this institution.
Well, it's interesting. There have the organization Catalyst has for years rated on 15 different attributes men and women leaders, and it's always women, quote, outpoint men in almost every single category. And of course, it's teamwork. And just what you said, because, we men, our testosterone kicks in and we want to play alpha dog, whereas women are a little more open to the concept of team. Would you agree? So,
well, I can't speak to that. I don't think I'm an expert, but I do feel that we can be very collaborative. I've been in different USA team coaching pools, and working with the women has been very collaborative, and the men tend to be more, this is how we're doing things, and they tell everybody. So all I can say is I think that one of the things that has been so fun to watch is the evolution of women evolving, not just in sport, because Title IX, it used to be you only majored in nursing or education back when I went to college. And now we have engineers and doctors and lawyers and all aspects of society covered, and we're functioning members. And 80% of the flourishing women who are now CEOs and executive level leaders played sport at some level.
Exactly. And that's great. So let's talk about a bit. How does an athlete or collegiate coach ensure and I like the way you put it, the student athlete gets the most out of the academic experience? How do you do that? Because playing at a high level sport is really, really time consuming. So,
well, it is absolutely demanding to be a student athlete, but yet we find that our student athletes flourish because they are in such a structure. And when they don't have their structure is when they have the most issues. And structure is good for everybody, and the athletes have to be highly structured. And I guarantee you our kids know that going into the day, they're going to have from 10 to 12 to study. Otherwise, they're in class, or off they go to practice till 6 p.m. Then they have to shower, they have to eat, and then they're going to study. So they plan ahead when they're going to study for their biology test tomorrow, when they're going to write their paper that's due for anthro. They plan ahead, and they use their time because they know it's the only time I have because I have games this weekend and I'm not going to have any time. So they really learn how to take care of those issues. It's part of their learning curve. And no question, when they first get here, we have to help them with that because they have to learn how to budget their time and how to say no to some things. But I've never met a softball player that doesn't have any time for the social aspect of being a college student.
Well, good.
They have to minimize it.
Because that social life is part of the whole person. So. Yeah. And so here, now speaking, quote, provincially here, we are in the state of Michigan where it gets cold in the winter and in the spring. So I know your teams always went to either Arizona or go to Arizona or Florida for extended periods of time. So that's got to be tough on the study process. Am I right or wrong, Carol?
Well, we travel the first 6-7 weeks of our season elsewhere. So we get on Thursday after we try to travel after school, but we mostly fly commercial. So that's not always as easy as it sounds. And but we leave Thursday and we get back Sunday night. So they typically miss. We're only allotted so many days to miss a semester or a season, I should say. But it can be taxing. They spend their whole weekend playing games. We'll play up to 5 games in a weekend. The only time we travel for an extended period would be spring break. So they largely don't miss class. And their studies although they often have things to do over spring break and have some work to do, but, they get a chance to just enjoy being a softball player and travel with their team. But yeah, it's a regimented program and they're all very capable of it. It helps prepare them when they go out in the real world and they excel sooner than others because they know how to get stuff done.
And that's great. I've interviewed a number of military folks in this program, and it's that same kind of thing of understanding your role and your mission and your duty, and you do it. So it echoes that, and it comes down to time management, certainly.
Absolutely. And discipline. Discipline, which is a military model, and the military and the athletics is not that far off.
No, that's true. So, toward that, I do know that every good officer that I've ever encountered said that you always have to speak up to those above you. So do you encourage your players to speak out against their coaches?
I encourage them to communicate with us. I think it is, and I often tell the middle infielders that it's the duty of their position, even though they tend to be an introverted, shy kid. But the duty of your position requires you to be loud and call for the ball and take over the field. That's the duty of your position, which I'm pretty sure a military guy would say as well. But no, do I want them if they can't get on page and, as I like to say, march when the drill sergeant says march and then follow the general, we got to understand each other. We need to understand, and we need them to have the courage to come in and ask the question, and not just question, but ask the question. And it helps give us help figure out how to make them tick.
Right. Now, I want to ask you a longitudinal question here. You were at Michigan for 38 years. You were the winningest coach. How did you keep that from going to your head? Or how did you prevent yourself from being on a pedestal?
Well, we won the national championship in 2005, and I called my mother from the field, and she said to me, the very first thing she said was, "I don't think you've been wearing your sunscreen." So but she said to me when I first started having some success, we started winning some championships, and then we started making some World Series, and people were writing and all this stuff. And my mom said to me one day, she goes, honey, don't believe everything they write about you. But, this is the thing. The game, any game, in athletics is truly a humbling experience because for every game I've been a part of winning, I can tell you games that I have personally made sure we lost and had everything to do with that loss. And you always keep your eye on the ball. Like people have always asked about my career and asked me to evaluate. I said, I'm in the middle of it. I am right now. I'm trying to win the next game. And for whatever you're doing out there, I can tell you all these other programs that are doing it way better. So all we ever try to do is stay competitive with the people above us. And we're always looking above us and trying to get there and try to remember that I'm just a person like you and like everybody else. We're just trying to do the best we can.
Wonderful. Have you thought about your legacy? How do you want to be remembered? Now, you're still very vigorous. You're still active in athletics, both at the University of Michigan and throughout the NCAA and other places. But what would you like to be remembered as, Carol?
Well, I know I'll be remembered for, winning a lot of games, being the first team east of Mississippi to win the national championship. Like I didn't win that championship. I didn't get that hit. And, I want to be remembered for just more than anything, being a good person. I want to be known for being a good human being, that I was kind to people most of the time. I'll have a few umpires that will disagree with that, but most umpires would say that they enjoy me on the field because I leave everything on the field, and that I'm just trying to do what's right. I want to do what's right by the game. I want to be a steward of the game, a steward of the university, and no bigger than that. I don't control what people think about me, but I've worked. My goal every day is to be a good human, and like everybody else, I fail at it somewhat every day also.
Well, speaking of that, and as you know, I ask every guest a question about grace. Is there a story or an example you wish to share with us, Carol?
Yeah, I thought about that after you mentioned it, and I had a situation a few years ago, and I've often had sisters on the team, more than one family member. And so a few years ago, I had two sisters on the team, and the older sister didn't play very much. She was definitely a backup player, and she was a pitcher, but she didn't really ever pitch much. And her younger sister was a star pitcher for us and was really up and coming, but a couple years younger. And that particular couple years, we had so many kids on the team that we had to have a travel roster, meaning everybody doesn't get to travel. And so as it turned out, the older sister wasn't on the travel roster on a couple of occasions. And I can tell you that I walked down into the breakfast room one morning with the younger sisters dining with the parents. And of course, the older sister wasn't there. And man, was it cold in that dining room. And they were obviously just irate. Although the kid pitched a no-hitter that day against a really good team, but I knew that they were very upset. And so after the season, I get a knock on my office door, and the door opens, and it's the mother, because they live pretty close by. And I thought, oh my God, she's come in here. She must have a gun. Like I thought she'd come and tell me off. She sat down and she looked at me. She goes, I came in to tell you, I am so sorry. She goes, I must have made you feel horrible. And I wanted to tell you, I know how hard you've worked to do right by my daughters and how well you've treated them. And she went on to, I was blown away by that absolute grace, and that she had realized that, this is a difficult situation. Nobody ever makes it willingly. And we've been close, ever since. And it meant the world to me. But I just thought it was just one of those human stories that you wish we all have moments of, losing our mind and not understanding a situation, but there's always another side to the story. And as I like to tell people, don't judge something by what you see in your one-dimensional lens. There's always a bigger picture. There's an iceberg under there. And, so I to this day remember that.
Oh, that's a powerful story. And I like it. It came from a moment of tension, shall we say, at minimum. And then the mom came to you and sought an apology, but also was a recognition of what you were doing and the difficulty that you were experiencing. And so it's a wonderful story. That is grace in action. And I will say it's the woman showed you grace because you have shown grace throughout your long tenure in leadership and will continue to do so. Carol Hutchins, it has been such an honor to have you on the program today. Thank you for sharing our time with us. And with that, we're going to go out. So
thanks so much. I've loved it.